Have you ever been ghosted by somebody that you felt really deeply connected to and even felt like this happened completely out of the blue? Well, this is something that quite frequently happens with fearful avoidance. And rather than blaming yourself for this experience or wondering what went wrong or what you did wrong, I'm hoping that today's video will be a really helpful educational resource for understanding, guess what? That may have not been personal at all. And there might actually be some really big things happening from the fearful avoidance end that lead up to this. So, without understanding what's happening from the fearful avoidant attachment style, of course, you're going to think it's about you. Of course, you're going to take it to heart, but it doesn't have to be that way. So, we're going to outline number one, what ghosting really is and some of the differences and places that people sometimes get mixed up here. And then we're going to dive into the hidden reasons. There are four hidden reasons that often cause the fearful avoidant attachment style to ghost. And by understanding these things, you won't take it personally. Or if you are the fearful avoidant watching this and just trying to learn more about yourself, this can also help you really deeply understand some of the patterns that are going to be extremely beneficial for you to correct in your own life. And it will benefit all of your future relationships. So some of these answers may actually surprise you. But let's start with talking a little bit about what ghosting really is. So, ghosting is basically immediately cutting off contact without any sort of forewarning, without any sort of explanation, and it's usually out of the blue. But I think that one place that has to be differentiated when we talk about this definition of ghosting is there is a really big difference between you're talking to somebody almost every day, you're building a connection, and suddenly you just completely ghost and don't even tell them, hey, I want to end this connection that's building between us, or this relationship. In some cases, it can be that extreme. Versus maybe, for example, you broke up with your ex 2 years ago, and once or twice a year, your ex says, hey, how are things? And hey, happy birthday. And you just decide, I don't really want to stay in communication with this person. I'm not going to respond. Okay. So if you're somebody who's having really sporadic communication with another person, and there's not this like consistency and depth of connection, you not responding to somebody, I don't think we can really call that ghosting, because there isn't some degree of expectation in the other person's mind that you're really going to be there. You're not a cornerstone of that person's life in any way. Versus it's really when you're leaving suddenly, when there's already this deep existing connection in a relationship or really budding dynamic, that it ends up being really hurtful to another person. And that's what ghosting really is. Okay. So sometimes I've heard people, and this is why I'm literally defining this. I've heard people who come out of relationships with toxic or unhealthy exes, and they think like, oh my gosh, every time my ex texts me, every 3 months, I have to respond to them. I have to say, thank you so much when they wish me happy birthday. I have to start a conversation. You don't. That's not ghosting. It's not ghosting to, need to stay in a relationship with your ex who you barely talk to when months and months have gone by that you're apart. Like there's nothing to do with ghosting there. So I just want to, get everybody to feel a little relieved there if that's the case. Another example is if you have a friendship that you've like completely fallen out of touch with and it's been 5 years and you're not doing a very good job of keeping the communication consistent. I mean, all of these things, like these aren't ghosting. Ghosting, when it really stings somebody, and when I think there is a duty to acknowledge this, is when literally somebody is seemingly in a relationship with you, talking all the time, and they just drop off out of the blue with no explanation and no forewarning at all. Okay. So why do fearful avoidants tend to do this? Why is this sometimes a common theme for the fearful avoidant attachment style? Well, there tend to be four hidden reasons. One of the first reasons is that the fearful avoidant attachment style isn't communicating their needs. Now, this may seem like a small deal, but it's actually a huge deal in the grand scheme of things. And here's why. If you're a fearful avoidant attachment style and you grow up in chaos, you grow up being told one story and then another story, you grow up perhaps seeing a parent be sober one day, not sober the next, these types of fearful avoidant dynamics somebody would grow up in, maybe having a parent who was really sweet one day and really angry another time. These types of dynamics, what this causes is a fearful avoidant is so immersed in the chaos in their external environment, they don't have room to have their parents meet their needs and to properly see them. So imagine, for example, that you're in an environment where there's all this intense chaos and it's like an emergency all the time. Well, if you're a child growing up in that environment, of course, there's no room for you, right? Even if you're loved or cared for, there just isn't room for your needs to be individually seen and heard, because there's too much chaos with maybe a parent being an alcoholic or so much fighting in the home all the time. Like there's just not room for the parents to see outside of their own stuff and be present with a young child in the way that that child needs. So a child gets conditioned to basically believe, well, I can't get my needs met anyways. My needs are not going to be seen or heard. Even at times when they try to get their needs indirectly through reaching out or being vulnerable, a lot of times for a fearful avoidant growing up, that kind of falls on deaf ears or those things aren't seen and heard. And so the child learns, I I'm never going to get needs met from other people. I'm just supposed to take care of others. And that's how then I'll at least receive some semblance of love. And so this person goes to grow into a full-fledged adult who often ends up in a lot of one-way relationships. They will meet the needs of other people. They'll be there for them. Fearful avoidants are often great with other people under pressure or when there's an emergency. They really show up and often save the day or help out. But fearful avoidants don't enter into relationships being vulnerable about their own needs. And a lot of people, quite honestly, maybe including yourself if you are a fearful avoidant, a lot of people think that the fearful avoidant is an emotionally available person because they're very present. They're really good at getting other people to open up and be vulnerable. People will feel seen and heard by them. But I would like to make a very strong argument that the fearful avoidant, if they are not in relationships built on some degree of reciprocity, if they are not able to be seen and heard, share their needs with other people and actively receive them at all. And I don't just mean like needs, in terms of like financial needs or physical needs. I mean, receiving emotional support sometimes, letting yourself lean on somebody else, being, having people be there for you. All of these things, that is actually emotional availability. And usually what we'll see is the fearful avoidant enters into relationships where they are there for others, but they're not really great at letting people be there for them or receiving from others. So now you basically have what's number two is a recipe for an imbalanced relationship, which is also a recipe for emotional burnout. And so what happens is we get these fearful avoidants who enter into relationships, they pour into that person, they're giving, 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 they're struggling to receive, they're feeling burnt out. And then it really brings me to number three of four major points here, which is that then they're going to feel frustrated. And eventually they start feeling like, okay, I'm not really getting my needs met. I'm not really receiving from this person. This person's not looking out for me in the same way that I'm looking out for them. But here's the most important thing. If you are a fearful avoidant listening to this, there's some part of you that believes that people are supposed to figure it out. There's some part of you that's like, okay, I'm waiting for that right person to come along, someone to save me or help me or do it for me. Just understand me and get me and always be there for me the way that I try to be there for other people. But there's a really important reality check in the growth and healing process as a fearful avoidant, which is that people are not mind readers. And you having that expectation, if you are a fearful avoidant, is something that will keep you isolated and keep you stuck. And one of the best things that you're seriously going to learn on your road to becoming secure and on your road to healing and building more deeply connected, thriving relationships is that if you truly share your needs and if you learn to be vulnerable and open up, people will give to you back. But it's because you always seem like you're good. It's because you always seem like you have everything together that you isolate yourself in doing that, right? You build up this dynamic of always feeling you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders or you're alone in things. And so it's really important to learn the power of communication, the power of letting yourself be seen and heard and known by select people in your life that can invest in reciprocity in your relationships. And so, I still have one other really important thing I want to share here with you, but I just want to drive home these first 3 points, which is that if a fearful avoidant ghost, it's usually because they're first holding things in, then they're getting burnt out relationally, and then they're feeling frustrated and overwhelmed. They start feeling like, hey, well, maybe this person doesn't care about me because they're not seeing my needs, they're not understanding it. And there's this background assumption that people should get it. And I want to say as well, like if you're a fearful avoidant listening, you're hypervigilant, right? Fearful avoidants who make up a small portion of the population are very hypervigilant. They're really good at reading between the lines. They pick up on all kinds of things so quickly and so easily. But you're the vast minority of the population. Every other attachment style doesn't do that. And even fearful avoidant attachment styles, even though they're so good at being hypervigilant, sometimes they'll get it wrong too. So you need to be able to communicate your needs. It's one of the most important things you'll ever learn. Now, before I tell you that last really important piece here, I do want to let you know if you are somebody who wants to learn to communicate better in your relationships, there is a How to Repair Any Relationship course you can check out fully for free for 14 days. And this actually comes with a full 14-day free trial to the Personal Development School. We do this once or twice a year, and we're doing it for the month of February this year for Valentine's Day month. So if you want full free access to all of the courses at PDS, you can check out all the webinars, the community, everything we've got going on in there. Easily take a couple courses and download them in that 14-day period of time, because each course is only a couple hours long, so you could get through a couple in there. Anyways, if you just want free extra support, resources all at your fingertips for free, I will put a link down below. And again, we just do this for a limited time, once or twice a year, so you can check it out. Now, last but not least, that fourth point is that a lot of times, the other thing that happens is fearful avoidants get so invested with everybody else's feelings that they hit this point of burnout. And it was when the fearful avoidant feels burnt out, overwhelmed, either by the one-way relationships that they're having and that lack of reciprocity, or by being in a position where they just feel like they're carrying the weight of the world, they start to drop off. They start deactivating. They sort of hibernate. They go into themselves when it feels like there's too much on their plate. And this is often a huge juxtaposition for other people in their lives, because a lot of people who are the loved ones of a fearful avoidant go from having this person like 10 out of 10 all in, really there, to suddenly they drop off. And then when the fearful avoidant knows that they've dropped off and disappointed somebody, they start guilting themselves. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm a bad friend or a bad person. They'll beat themselves up. They'll be hard on themselves. And then how a fearful avoidant tends to approach guilt is they feel like, well, I don't even, this person doesn't even want a friend like me anyways, or a relationship like this anyways. I ruined it. I shouldn't even bother going back. And they often have a lot of guilt and even shame about their behavior, which further isolates them more. So the remedy for this, if you were ghosted, is to make sure that you're recognizing this is not about you. This is about their own patterns. And if you are the fearful avoidant listening to this, one of the most important things you're going to learn is healthy boundaries, communicating your needs, being open to reciprocal relationships where you can get seen and heard and connected to, so that you don't keep accidentally isolating yourself. And that is going to help you be able to communicate through challenges when they come up, instead of think that they're unsolvable problems because the other person isn't reading your mind. And thus you just need to pull away completely. Okay. Literally life-changing for relationships. So hopefully this is helpful for you today. If you have questions, let me know in the comments down below. If you have future videos you want me to make, I'm always loving new video topics and ideas. So please comment them. I pull from the video comment section all the time, like in terms of topics. And thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here. And listen, if you want to share a ghosting story or something you've been through as well, please feel free to share down below. Also, if you enjoyed today's video and you like this channel, please subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming future videos about dismissive avoidance, fearful avoidance, and anxious attachment styles in relationships.